I want to welcome everybody back to the conversation. I am your host, Natasha Lamar, and I have a guest today, which we can call her a co host because she's here every week. I would like to introduce to you Jadia Jackson.
Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon when you're listening.
Okay, guys, so last week I talked about it was part one, and it was creating and maintaining a relationship. And I like to say healthy relationship because believe it or not, I've seen couples be married 30, 40 years and be miserable and not really be happy. And I'm not saying that those years don't count, but I would rather have and or teach individuals how to create healthy um, um, sustainable relationships. And so that's a little bit what we're going to talk about today. On last week, we talked about some of the first things that's important with creating a healthy relationship is first knowing thyself. Know yourself, know your strengths, know your weaknesses, know your triggers, know what make you happy, what make you sad and mad. Know yourself because when you know yourself, then it's easier to draw to you someone who can complement the things that you already love and admire about yourself. Because when you don't know, it's hard to say no, right? When you don't know yourself, it's hard to say yes or no to someone because you're still in this questioning phase. So the first thing I would say is know yourself. Now, as we transition into the part two, we were talking about how do you learn yourself? How do you get to know yourself? How do you know what's appropriate? How do you know what's not appropriate? And I want to start with JD, just asking her, what are some of your thoughts around how do you get to know yourself? Or what are some of the things you feel a person should do first in their journey of knowing thyself?
That's an excellent question. And if they're not, um, even this is not even true. I was going to say if they're just a child, then they wouldn't know themselves. But people are always discovering who they are as they're growing.
Right.
And one of the ways that we get to know ourselves is in relationships. In other words, you know what your likes and dislikes are based upon what you're being triggered by and what people are showing
Mhm.
up, what you enjoy doing. Now, that's external. You have to figure out what it is that you like about yourself. So, how do one go inward? And that's the journey. That's the problem. Like, how do, and it's about sometimes being willing to be with ourselves, being alone. If you can't stand your own company and you want to be with other people all the time, then that may speak to something a little deeper. And you need to sit with that and go, why can't I, what is it that I need that's allowing me not to be with myself? I'm not saying that there aren't people who enjoy being with other people because that's what extroverts are. They like being in the
Right.
company of other people. I'm not speaking on that. I'm speaking on if you never like being by yourself, then that's saying that you may not know who you are. And if you're looking for other people to define you versus being able to say, this makes me happy, this doesn't make me happy, or this brings me joy, because happiness
Right.
is fleeting. So I think to just sum it up, begin to look for what makes you happy or bring you joy, and what causes you to be unhappy or sad. And then that's just the beginning of how to figure out who, in terms of knowing oneself.
Right. I 100% agree with you. And I was going to jump into the introvert or extrovert and ambivert, right? Because the ambivert is that person who can do both. Like they get energy from being alone and then they get energy from being with others. And the truth is, I'm an extrovert. I absolutely love being around people who love me and that I love, especially, my friends and, my family and so on and so forth. However, I do enjoy some alone time. I do enjoy taking time out for myself. So I 100% agree with you, and I'm glad that you brought that up. Another thing that you spoke on that I think is really really important. It's really about knowing the things that brings you joy, right? I've worked with clients sometimes and I ask them, what are some of the things that bring you joy? And I don't necessarily like to talk about happiness because happiness is contingent upon what's happening, right? It's fleeting, like you mentioned. And one thing that I know about life is ever changing. Nothing stays the same. So if it's good, it's going to change. If it's bad, it's going to change. And so
Which is a good
understanding the
thing.
ebbs and flows of life, embracing yourself. So when it's changing for the hard, you're bracing yourself and you've put things in place. When you up high, enjoying it, right? Because guess what? You're not gonna stay high. So I 100% agree. But when I work with clients sometime and I ask them, what are some of the things that bring you joy? And it's like, I don't even really know. And this is the thing. How can you begin to provide joy within yourself or expect it from someone else if you don't even know? And people oftentimes think that joy is a brand new car or a brand new house. Joy could literally be reading a book. Joy could be, for me, eating a really good meal. Joy could be um a good run or a good breathing exercise or going to the spa or going for a walk or going outside and finding four different leaves, like that mindfulness. What are the things that literally bring you joy? And when you don't know that, and I'm going to lean into the camera when I say this, if you don't know what brings you joy, don't get into a relationship with someone else. Get into a relationship with yourself first. And you say, well, what you mean by that? Date yourself, treat yourself, do things nice for yourself, try stuff. You may like it, you may not. Just like when you're on a date and your partner take you somewhere, like, ooh, I did not like that. Note it, right? And that's the same thing that you do with yourself. Take yourself to different places and do different things. And if you don't like it, it's okay. Duly noted. Ooh, I do not like that. What are your thoughts about that?
I think that's absolutely important. When you don't know yourself, it's really hard to have someone contribute to
Right.
what brings you joy, because that's what people, no one is responsible for our happiness. No one is responsible for our joy. We're responsible for our joy. However, we look for people to make us happy. We look for
Right.
people to bring us joy versus contributing.
Right.
However, how can I contribute to you if I don't know what you need? Because
Mm.
without you letting me know what it is, I'm going to make it up. And when I make it up, I'm going to make it up based upon my experience
Right.
or based
Right.
upon the people that I've interacted with. And these are the things that made them happy. So then this might make you happy, or this might bring you joy. I like this concept of dating yourself,
Mm-hmm.
in that take yourself out on a date. And if you're now attempting to get into a relationship and someone says where you want to go, you have a list of places that you have gone to that made you happy. The
Right.
service was exceptional. This is your favorite dish. This is your favorite dessert. Versus, I don't know, any place will be all right. Well, no, that's right now. You have not given that person any information
Right.
that's saying to them, this is what they need, and let me see if I can provide that, because we
Right.
forget that people are wanting to contribute to us, but they can only contribute to us to to the limit of what you tell them that you need.
Right.
Without that, they're making it up.
Right. I agree with you on that. If you don't tell someone what it is that you need, they give you what they need or what they think you need. And so I think that is
Absolutely.
really, really good. I remember I was working with a client some years ago and she created this concept and I told her in session, I said, listen here, I love that and I'm stealing. I'm just gonna let you know. So if she's watching this, I told you I was gonna give you credit, but I told you I was gonna steal it as well. We were talking about trauma and just kind of how trauma literally can reroute your original route where you were originally going to go. But trauma can create this thing where I'll never do that again. And people ask me, they like, well, how do you know if you've been traumatized by something? Because I have people to say, you know what, I had really good parents. I never got spanked. I never got. And I like to get people to understand trauma isn't just sexual or physical abuse. Trauma isn't just what happened to you. It could be what didn't happen to you, like your hugs or your kisses. But I tell that story to say she brought up this concept and it was trauma or truth. Now, the way that I'm going to use it today is when you make a decision or when you are attempting to date yourself or when you're attempting to understand what really brings you joy, literally, if it's biting your toenails, like that really brings you joy. True story. I said that in a session one time and my class said, oh my God, how did you know? And I'm like, I didn't. I'm just saying that was an example. But if biting your toenails make you happy, then so be with it, right? But when I think of this concept with trauma or truth, as you're attempting to be with yourself and date yourself, as you're creating these to-dos and not to-dos, are they based on trauma or are they based on truth? And I want to tell a quick story. My mom and dad were married until my dad passed away. And they were really, really good friends. Now, you know, they had their issues as all marriages do. They had their issues, but my dad used to always buy my mom flowers. Like literally weekly, he would buy her flowers. And I developed a hate for flowers. I did. I thought they were pretty, but I was like, no, first of all, they too expensive and they gonna die. So buy me something to eat so I can enjoy it, right? And as I began to do my own work, and I had to think to myself, my hating flowers, what was it connected to? Was it connected to a truth that I really didn't like the flower, or was it connected to trauma? The reason why I didn't like the flowers because I felt like in my immature brain as a child, I felt like my dad bought those flowers as an olive branch, as a babe, I'm sorry. And I was like, I never want flowers from a man. I never want flowers, right? But the truth is, it was based on trauma and it wasn't based on truth. And the interesting thing, I have friends that love flowers. I think all of my friends love flowers. And I'm like, right. I'm like, oh my gosh, those flowers are really beautiful. And that's really good that you love flowers. But I have other people, and I'm like, oh my gosh, those flowers are so beautiful. And I really had to realize that it wasn't about truth. I didn't like flowers because I just didn't like them. I did not like them because I had connected receiving flowers to someone that had done something and was asking for permission to re-enter, to be loved or to be accepted. And so I connected to that. And now I like flowers. That is understanding your stuff and being open and honest about what makes you happy, what doesn't make you happy, what makes you sad, what you love, what brings you joy, all of those things are very important. So I wanted to share that because when you can be honest with yourself, if you're watching this and you're like, oh my gosh, I just want to be happy. Like every person I date is the same exact thing. I would encourage you to do the work. I would encourage you to date yourself. And again, whenever you're making these rules on what you should or should not do, is it trauma, right? Am I making this rule because I said I'll never ever date somebody with ... Or is it I decided not to do it because I feel like it isn't? So is it trauma or is it a truth for you? What are your thoughts about that? That was a lot.
Yeah, but it was a lot of good stuff, which is very important. Um, so I like because we're talking about how to create and maintain. So today
Right.
it's about the maintaining, and
Right.
it's interesting that when someone because I do love flowers. So it's interesting that when I say I love flowers, flowers make me happy, I should say. Do make me happy. So
Okay.
if my husband was to do something to fall out of grace with me and he brought me flowers, to me, you're right, that is an olive branch. And that's how he's attempting to maintain my
Mm.
relationship. And so I have to be mindful of this is him reaching, and I have to be willing to reach back because that's just opening the door for us to then begin the process and explore what happened, what needs. But if I'm unwilling to accept that extension, that olive branch, then what I'm doing is I'm contributing to the discord continuing within the relationship. And so that's how we end up in this prolonged conflict because my feelings have been hurt, or I feel disrespected, dishonored, or whatever it is, and then I want to hold on to that emotion versus I really want to get beyond that feeling so that I can get back to the connection that I'm wanting or that we had. And so that's what's important when we think about maintaining these relationships is understanding ourselves. And that's what I heard you say. You
Mhm.
began to explore where did this connection to disliking flowers come from? And that's the thing. That's how you find out who you are is when you begin to explore. That's the going inward. So that was an excellent example of demonstrating to someone how they can go inward to figure out what is it that they need versus not going inward in pointing at other people, you versus, what is this really trying to tell me about me?
Okay.
That's it.
Yeah, I like that, and I like the fact that I was talking about dating myself, and then you brought in dating or being in relationship with your husband because you're absolutely right. I think once you know where your joy comes from, or you know how to create it, it's easier for you to recreate it, right? And once you understand the rules in which you created for yourself, you know how to effectively communicate it to the person that you are in relationship with, first being yourself and or being with someone else. I want to say this, and I know we're up on our time because we like to keep these to 15 minutes. I want to say this: if you are in a relationship and you are asking, like, well, how do I maintain my relationship with my partner? I want to give a couple of tips, and we can talk about this a little later. But if you are in a relationship and you've already dated yourself and you know what it is that you need, one of the things or two of the things that you can do is learn to fight fair. And when I say fight, I'm not talking about a physical fight. I am actually talking about learning how to argue appropriately, or learning how to get your needs met appropriately. And at some point or another, I'll definitely come back to the 8 steps or stages of how to fight fair. And remember, I am not talking about physical, because that's never okay. Again, thank you all for joining us today. Part 2 of creating and maintaining relationships. I may do a part 3. I'm not really sure, because I think I want to talk about how to fight fair. But with that being said, remember, if you love to be a part of this, if you have any questions or a topic that you would like for me and JD to discuss on the conversation, please email me or DM me. Again, I am Natasha Lamar, and thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye, guys. And take care.